Counting the.
cost of being a medical doctor in the UK.
Okay, so Sarah, um, what made you want to become a doctor in the first place?
Sorry?
In the first place.
In the first place, yeah, it's a mixture of things. So obviously, an interest in science, interest in the body, interest in helping people. But I think what really first sparked that dream or idea of becoming a doctor was actually related to my dad passed away when I was 9.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was quite sudden. I won't go into how it happened, but basically that obviously happening at such a young age and seeing the impact of that loss on my family, on my mum, I think it kind of made me think like if I could do a job that stops that from happening, or like if I could do something that saves people from feeling that loss, um, that would be a pretty amazing job to have. And then obviously that's where I was like, I want to be a doctor. So I think from the age of like 10, 11, I was like really sure I wanted to do medicine. But obviously you're so young, so but it stayed with me. And then when I was about 15, 16, I had some work experience in a hospital, so to see what doctors actually do. And then from there, I was definitely sure that that's what I wanted to do.
Wow, you have something in common because my father also passed away when I was a high school student, and you
Oh, wow.
experienced it even before you turned into a teenager, so it must have been worse because you're just 9. I was 16, 17 or something, like sophomore in high school. I just had 1 year left before I graduated from high school, so you were much, much, much younger. So that shock made you want to do something to stop people from getting sick, and you also experienced some sort of like a hospital or something, or 15 or 16.
Yeah,
what was that?
Yeah, so in England, like when you're about 15, 16, they give you some time from like a few weeks off from school to find work experience in a field you're interested in. So I did, I think 2 weeks in a hospital, which I was quite lucky to get because it's actually hard to get experience that young in a hospital just because of safety or confidentiality and these restrictions. And then I did a week in an architecture firm because my other idea was that I wanted to be an architect. But I spent a week in this architect firm and I was like, no, that's not for me. And I was like, I can't do that. But like in my first day in the hospital, I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. Obviously, then going through medicine and becoming a doctor is a different story because when you're younger, you have a more, I think, ideal idea of what it will be like. But the reality can be a bit different. But still, I have no regrets. So yeah.
Wow. So you did enjoy your experience in the hospital, and then what did you not like about working for the architecture farm?
It just wasn't. I mean, it was interesting, obviously, but I just didn't like being sat down the whole day at the desk. That's not. I can't stand that, and it just wasn't as like exciting. I think, and when in the hospital, there's always each day is different. I felt, and it's more thrilling, more hands-on. You're moving around. I actually I thrive on emergencies, I guess, or stress. It sounds odd, but I think I enjoy that a lot. So yeah, that's I think that was the biggest difference.
Wow. So so I guess architects don't have to deal with emergency situation because they're dealing with the paper and the buildings that are not talking to you or they're not bleeding. So I guess going through crazy things that you encounter every day in the hospital appeal to you the most.
Yes, I think so. That was it. And I think the other thing was also like you say, it's the interaction. I'm a people person. I like building that relationship with people, bonding with people. So there was that as well because it was interesting and it was a great time in the architect firm. But you just sat alone at a desk, designing things and drawing and stuff. So you don't have that. I think.
Oh, I see.
And then it wasn't as rewarding, I guess, as well as.
Oh, I see.
Think or hope medicine is, yeah.
You're gonna see a nice building that's not talking to you, so.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's an architect firm, not an architecture firm.
Architecture, which I don't know, whichever architect firm, yeah.
Okay. So architects design buildings and they make it happen, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. So wow. So what did you do for 2 weeks?
In the hospital?
Yeah.
Oh, this is a long time ago. So obviously I was so young. You can't like do much because you're not, you're not qualified or like the age and everything. But I just shadowed. So I spent time with the nurses and doctors. I went with them on the ward rounds. Nurses are just help with what they do. So obviously they go and they like do things like taking bloods or they washing a patient even or giving serving them food. With the doctors, I went with them on the ward round, went to clinics, just observe what they're doing. So I was just basically shadowing people, different people in the team throughout the 2 weeks. So it was really interesting. I got time to speak to some patients as well, which was really, I guess, a good opportunity. But they allowed me to do that. So it was a mixture of things, which allowed me to see kind of what's involved, what happens, I guess, in the hospital because it was my first time being there in that capacity, not being like, a family member or a patient or anything.
Wow, so you're able to observe what is actually going on behind the scene. You talk to the nurses and patients and doctors and whoever was involved in that medical work. And there are all kinds of people that work for the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And why a doctor, not a nurse, not a yeah front desk
Yeah,
person?
you're like taking me back to my med school interviews. So there's something that they ask is why a doctor or why not this or that, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's a hard one to answer because I think all the jobs are important, and medicine really is what they call like multidisciplinary. Like you need all the specialties to come together to really provide the best care. So that's important to say. But to be a doctor, why? Because I wanted a certain level of, I guess, education. So having that knowledge to be able to diagnose and treat patients, I wanted that. I also felt that, and also being a doctor, you can do clinical medicine. You can also go into research. You can go into teaching. There's a lot of scope you can do with your medical degree. I also felt like I wanted to build that relationship with the patient as a doctor. So I think nurses do a very important job, but it's also limited to what they can do. And they're also usually at the like, having to do what the doctor instructs them to do as well. So I also wanted to be the person that can actually see someone and diagnose them there and then and help them in that aspect medically. And I think also, like I said, the biggest part for me about being a doctor is building that rapport, that relationship with your patients, especially if you're like a general practitioner or a family doctor. You get to build that relationship with them over many years. And then the second part of my dream was to do work in the developing world. And again, I wanted to do that being a doctor. I think it just allows you to have a bit more, I think, opportunity. And I guess, I don't know what the right word is, but I guess you're slightly senior, which allows you probably a bit more or freedom as well, and more opportunities for what you can do.
Wow, that's a lot. So
Sorry.
you didn't become a doctor just because you wanted a good job, but you were ambitious in the sense that you wanted to achieve more so you can help people better, especially building relationship with people and building so I don't remember building any relationship with any doctor in my life so far. So what do you envision in terms of building a relationship with people? And you talked about a family doctor. What is that?
Okay, so in England we have primary and secondary healthcare. So primary healthcare is like your family doctor. So we call them GPs, which is like a general physician, and they're your family doctor. So you will see them locally. You have a GP clinic in your neighborhood, and you have to be registered with a GP practice, like with a medical center, and they will serve like I don't know the most I don't know like 3,000 people around that where you live or that area, and that's your family doctor. So if you have a problem or you're feeling sick, that's your first port of call, and that's where you'll go if you have an issue. So that's what we would call primary care, and that's what I mean by family doctor. So those doctors, you can really, hopefully, ideally, you can build a relationship with over a long time. So when I spend time in GP practices, I've been there for a few months because obviously I've not been in one place. Because when you're training, you're in a place for a few months at a time. But when you actually then qualify fully and you work somewhere, you can become a partner in a medical clinic, and you can work there for basically your entire life until you retire. So
Really?
Yeah, so there's GPs that so you own. It's very hard to explain how it works, but basically you can have like 5 or 6 doctors who own this medical center, and they serve that community.
Wow.
And then basically, if usually they stay there. So once you decide where you want to settle, they will work there and stay there until they retire. And I've had doctors that have worked in the community for 40, 50 years, and they literally know everyone.
Wow.
And they've treated generations of families. So that's how that is usually, it's more old school, but that still happens.
Wow.
Um,
That's
yeah.
unbelievable. I've never heard anything like that.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really think about it. Maybe it's unique to that having that primary secondary healthcare system. But that's how you can build your relationship with patients. So it's an attractive specialty to go into for that reason as well. Um, and you can do it as well being in a so secondary care, sorry, is hospitals, and that's where you go for obviously certain things or specialties that you need treatment, and you'll be referred to the hospitals by your family doctor. That's how it works in England. So I know in Korea you go and see a specialist. Like if you have a heart problem, you go see a cardiologist. If you have a bone issue, you go to orthopedics. Like I think it's mainly you just go and see a specialty.
Uh-huh.
Where in England, it's not like that. You have to go to your family doctor, then you're referred up to a specialist if you need it. So as a hospital doctor or a specialist, you can also build that relationship with a patient, but I guess it's not as long term, and it's not as I guess as often, because you wouldn't see a patient so often, because you'll treat them their acute issue once, and then you don't see them again maybe for a year, or even ever again if they're fully healed.
Wow, that's awesome. So each city or each suburb or each town has a medical clinic where 4 or 5 different doctors are working as general practitioners, and they are pretty much in charge of that area, and they build a relationship with people for decades, and then they are like traffic control. They send people where they need to go, and then the specialist will help them with the more specific needs.
Yes, exactly.
Wow, that's interesting. I've never heard that. Is that something special in England? Because I don't think we have that kind of thing here in Korea.
I think it's special in the sense that it's been around a long time in England, or the United Kingdom, and I don't know where it's come from. But I think it is pioneered there, because I know that there are GPs or general practitioners that are now doing research into primary care, and they are actually then traveling to different parts of the world, to, like for example, Malaysia and some African countries. They're interested in implementing this primary and secondary healthcare system. So these GPs that are in the top of their field and they do the research in primary care, they go to these countries to help them implement the system, how to make the changes to healthcare systems in other countries. So I think the reason why, and the UK system is good, but obviously no system is perfect. But I think the reason why it works is because it allows, I think it helps them like not burden the hospital or secondary care so much. And I think the benefit of primary care is what I said, is that you can ideally have a family doctor that you're always kind of going back to, that you can build that relationship and they get to know you on a better level, rather than seeing a different doctor each time you need something.
Wow. So is it a general understanding for British citizens to be able to relate to doctor very comfortably because they know each patient very well?
Yeah, yeah, ideally yes. The only issue is that if you sometimes doctors can change, like in the practice. Secondly, if you move around, obviously your doctor will change. So yeah, but for example, when I grew up, we had the same few doctors for like since I was a child until I was in my 20s, and then one of them doctors retired, one passed away, and then we moved cities. So basically, we had the same doctor for 15, 20 years, but then obviously because they retire or things happen, and then we also move cities, and obviously you have a new doctor. So yeah, most ideally, yeah, you can see the same doctor if they're still there and if you're in the right place.
Wow,
But
that's unbelievable. So do they actually make eye contact with the patient?
yeah, they do. So the thing is, what I've noticed, I think what I've noticed being in Korea, and the system's very different, that you can't compare. But when I've gone to see a doctor here or I've gone with David, it's very different. I feel like and then I also wonder if it's the language barrier or not, but they don't talk to you as much. It's very direct. Like this is what you need to do this, do this. You don't really make any conversation. But then I wasn't sure if that's because we don't speak much Korean or what the reason is. But no, you definitely they make eye contact. I think the biggest thing in England is like they do really really drill into you, especially in med school, is like what we call comm skills, communication skills.
Wow.
And that's a really really key thing when you're training, and it's really important. So for example, your appointments with a GP are about 10 minutes, but there'll be times where it can take longer, or if you need it, and they will talk to you, and of course they make eye contact. But it's definitely different to how I've seen things happen here, or even my experiences in Kenya as well, because obviously David was Kenyan. So I don't know, I've always felt like the way I've been trained, like you just definitely spend more time talking and taking a thorough history than I've seen in some other countries. But I don't know if that's just the style of training. But...
Wow, that's unbelievable, because I don't know if you've ever been to an IKEA. Have you ever been to IKEA?
Yeah.
I felt like I have become part of a factory. Like I'm being moved on a conveyor belt, and they're using me so they can make money. Like that's how I felt. Like things were moving according to how they set up, and I was just being moved on an escalator according to their direction, and all the workers are there. Okay, move, 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 move. And when you're standing in line for food, everything was so like organized, and that's sometimes how I feel when I step into the hospital, or even when I talk to the doctor's office. He doesn't really seem to be interested in what I'm going through. He seems to be interested in getting rid of me as soon as possible. So when you said they actually interact with the patients, I was blown away. And also when you said they stay there for so many years, so that's really really impressive.
That's interesting that you say that, because I think that's it. I guess it's also different because I don't know if it's training styles, culture perhaps as well, but also because in England you have the National Health Service, the NHS, so healthcare is completely free. Obviously you pay for your taxes, but it's healthcare is entirely free for everyone.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think, and again, I have to say this because the NHS is a great institution, but it's not perfect. It has a lot of flaws, obviously, like any system, and unfortunately, right now it's lacking in funding, and over the years, funding has got less, and it's going to cause more and more problems. However, healthcare is still free, completely free, and I think that's probably maybe what makes one of the differences, because obviously, you don't have that notion that maybe they're just wanting my money, or they're just making me get these tests because they want me to pay more. So that notion isn't there, because I definitely know that people feel that maybe in Korea and also in Kenya, because again, you're paying for healthcare. So it makes you wonder, like, well, do I really need all these tests, or they're just sending me from this test to this place to this place? So I guess that concern in your mind about it, the motivations of the practitioner is not there. So I think that's probably one thing that makes a difference. But yeah, so maybe that's something that...
Yeah, when you go to a car mechanic, or when you go to any vendors, you wonder if this guy is actually telling you the truth, or is he lying and trying to sell more stuff. And then that's something you also wonder, especially when you go to a dental clinic. Is this guy really doing something that I really need, or is he needing my money? So wow. So what you're saying is, because the system is something national, everybody is taking advantage of the free healthcare. They're not as much pressure to try to get as much money as possible from the patients.
So there's no pressure to do that. Obviously, there's pressures to see a certain number of patients, to be efficient. Obviously, you don't want to give unnecessary tests to people, because that will cost, the system. But there's no motivation like they want me to do this because they're making money off me. So I guess that issue isn't there.
Wow, it almost sounds like a communist country in that aspect.
Yeah, I guess in a sense, but I mean, I know other countries have similar systems. So I know, I think Cuba is somewhere that has a very good healthcare system, and it's very similar in that sense. And they have this free healthcare. But the problem with Cuba is that, like you said, because they, like, doctors aren't paid very much in that country, for example, and everyone's just paid like the same kind of salary. But and that's a separate issue, separate topic. Because Cuba's interesting is that they train many doctors and they treat doctors almost like a commodity. So they send their doctors to work abroad. So they make deals with other countries and send their doctors to go work in other countries that lack doctors. But anyway, yeah.
Oh, I see. So is Cuba a developed country? I'm not really familiar with Cuba.
It's not. I mean, yeah, relatively, but it's not. Not. I guess compared to, I don't know, the Western countries, I guess.
Oh, so okay.
But they have a remarkable healthcare system for I guess relative. Like I think if you look at the numbers, they actually, and I think one of the ones is like maternal death. They actually do better than the US. So it's interesting.
Okay. So.
But we're opening a whole other kind of worms if we start comparing countries.
Yeah.
About the US.
But yeah, so I guess they have a pretty good system because obviously the result is a lot better than even America. So they are training a lot of doctors and they're sending them abroad, and that's how they also make money. So I guess they're training a lot of doctors. So so back to UK. So how far have you been in this journey to become a doctor? You say you're doing your residency?
Yes. So how far into it? So what you do is, I guess you have to do A levels. So when you're like 16 to 18, you do A levels, which you need to get into university. And then it's very competitive. You have to get very high grades, and now I think it's even harder than when I did it years ago. But because my A level, I really struggled with my A levels. I found them really hard, and so I didn't do very well. So I got into my bachelor's degree to do biomedical science. So that's a bachelor of science. So I did that first because my A levels weren't good enough to go straight into medical school. So I did my first degree, and once I finished that, which was 3 years, I then applied to medical school with that degree as a graduate. And then I got into medical school off the back of that. And then I went to medical school for 5 years. So that's 8 years of university education. And then when you graduate from med school in the UK, you have to do something called foundation training, which I guess is similar to an internship, like in the US when you graduate. I think Korea is similar. So when you graduate, you just have to do a year. You're working, you're a fully qualified doctor, and you're being paid. But I guess it's just your initial transition into working. And so in the UK, it's 2 years of this foundation training. So you're working, but you're doing rotations. You have every 4 months you rotate to a different specialty, and it's allowing. So over these 2 years, you will do 6 different specialties, and you have a choice of which ones you do. And that's interesting, and it's really good because it allows you to experience different specialties before you then choose which one you want to go into.
Wow.
So you spend these 2 years doing these 6 specialties, and then after that you then apply for what you want to do, whether it be to be a surgeon, to be a GP or family doctor, or to do medicine. So within medicine, you have like cardiology, or you have like pediatrics, you have maybe being respiratory doctor. Like you have loads of different, obviously different things to choose from. So after those 2 years, you can then choose, and then you go into your, I guess, what you call your specialty or residency training.
Oh, okay. So you have to be a good student up to high school, and then you pass that test or whatever, and then you go to 5-year college degree, 4 years.
Yes, So if you do well in your A levels when you're 18, you can go straight into med school if you get in, and it's 5 years. Yeah.
Oh, I see. And then after that, you go get into the medical school, which is 3 years, you said?
Oh no. So I did a degree first, so it was just a bachelor, 3 years, and then 3-year degree, and then 5-year medical school.
Oh, okay.
And graduate. However, like I was saying, if someone does well in their A levels, but because it's very competitive, you have a lot of people that are now doing medicine as a graduate, meaning like you do 1 degree and then you go into medicine because it's super competitive. So a lot of people are doing that. Like when I was in medical school, almost 30-40% of the students were graduate students. So they were like in their 20s or mid 20s, like 2020, 21, 22. They've done one degree already, and now they're doing medicine. And then the rest of the students were 18 when they started, so they had just done their A levels, like their high school, and then they go straight to medical school.
Wow.
If that makes
So
sense.
so medical school is 5 years long, and then there are 3 years before that, and not everybody get into medical school straight,
Yeah.
because it's so competitive, and they jump into later.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what kind of test do you need to pass to get into the? So 3 years is are they like a prerequisites to get into the medical school?
So no, so what you need is your A levels. So basically, you need to study biology, chemistry, and maths usually, and you can take an additional A level, which is non-science. And for those grades, you need like I guess I don't know what the equivalent is, but A stars and A's. So they're very very high, like I think over 90% basically in those subjects. It's very hard, and they made it even harder because I think students are doing a lot better as the years go on, so they have to make the exams harder. So to keep making these grades like seem prestigious, it's very very. I A levels are very difficult, and it's not even per se about your knowledge; it's about passing this exam. So learning how to pass an exam rather than even having the knowledge, if that makes sense.
Oh, I see.
So so that's what you need. And then if you have the grades and you get a place in medical school, then you can go at 18. And medical school is 5 years. At 23, you'll be a doctor. So that's how you can do it like traditionally. However, because of like I said, one A levels can be difficult and competitive. So, for example, medical school like has like so where I went, you have 120 places for my where I went to medical school, but the applications for those 120 places was over 3,000. So if the competition is very very high, and yeah, and that's the same for all med schools across the country. So you'll have med schools that maybe have 400 for their class size, but they'll have applications like again in the thousands. So it's very very competitive, and I think that's really the same all over the world, unfortunately. But so yeah, so that's why people end up then doing a degree, like, and it doesn't have to be science even. I did science because that's what I'm interested in, but you have people that might even study English, study history, who then want to do medicine, and then again at that point they do have to meet some kind of, like you said, prerequisites. They have to take some science classes
Okay.
if they want to then like change from doing like humanities subject to go into
Ah.
science. But if you have
Oh.
the science background or the science A levels, you can go and get into med school with the right grades.
Okay. So
Yeah.
so get into any program where you can get a degree, and then get good grades there, and then meet some prerequisites, and then get into medical school, and that's very competitive, and like 120 or 400 out of thousands of
Yeah,
people,
yeah,
and
yeah.
which you passed.
Yes, somehow.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
unbelievable. So were
Yeah.
you always a good student when you were growing up?
Uh, yes, I think yes and no. I studied very hard. I think what I always trying to explain to people is I'm not naturally, like, some people are naturally very gifted or intelligent. Like my brother's one of those people. He can easily read a book and just remember it and just do great. And like, and you're just like, why can't I be like that? So for me, I feel like, and for most people, you study really hard. So I think I always studied very hard. I always knew what I wanted, like what I wanted to do. My goal was always very like straight and narrow. I wanted to be a doctor, and I knew it was going to be hard. So I always had that in mind, and then just studied. I had tutors, like extra tuition. I guess some of like had ones. So I had after school tuition for science when I was younger. So I needed that support. Um, and then even so then in my degree, my bachelor of science, I did well. And even for then you have to get a minimum of 2-1 as like a upper class, so over what is it, over 70% in your degree to then go on to med school as well. So I guess I just was always focused and I worked hard, but I always tell everybody that I believe anyone can do it. You just have to know what you want and persevere, because it doesn't come without failure, it doesn't come without difficulty.
Wow. So were you an avid reader when you were growing up?
Yes, I was. Like, I loved reading books from a young age. So I was just like children's books and novels and Harry Potter. And then I guess it goes from that. So yeah, I definitely was a reader.
Because I wasn't, even though
Oh,
there are so many books that my parents purchased because they expected me to read them, but they watched dramas and TVs, and it's difficult to read when TV is on. And
yeah.
so what did your parents do, or were you self motivated?
I it's like a bit of both. I had an interest in I guess reading, but my mum was very strict as well. More so when we were younger, and she became more relaxed as we got older. But we weren't allowed to watch TV.
Wow.
Like we not completely. We could watch, but like a certain time, a
Wow.
time limit, or on weekends and that kind of thing. I remember there
Wow.
was times like she would cover the TV with like a blanket or a sheet. Like
Wow.
you can't touch it. Yeah, so when I look back, I'm like, wow, mom, you're really strict. And she was like, yeah, it had to be done. But at the time, we didn't feel she was strict because we were still allowed to play, we were still allowed to watch TV, but just in a controlled way and set times.
Wow.
Homework was important. We had the extra tuition, but we were allowed to also do other things. So, and we played sports, we played instruments, and looking back, thanks to mom, thanks to God, like we had a good childhood, a good variety of stuff.
Wow.
But at the same time, I guess without realizing it, my mum, I guess mum and dad, but obviously, like I said, it was mum for most of the years later. But they both instilled this ethos of studying and making it enjoyable and how important it is. So my dad was a maths professor, so he had a big interest and joy in maths. So we grew up like playing with the abacus and doing a Kumon maths and
Oh,
and
cool. Oh, okay, okay, okay. The Japanese one.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, so I guess we just grew up in a house, I guess that was prioritized, but also made it kind of fun. So my mom would, for example, when we did Kumon, like our maths homework, my dad would make it into a race, like how many questions we could answer in a time, we get a prize. My mom would be cooking, and like we would do spelling. She would tell us words, and we have to spell them out, and again we get like a little treat or a little prize. Like it was just fun. Like we do it while she's in the kitchen, we were sat at the table.
Wow.
So I guess when I look back, there's really, I'm really like obviously blessed to have such parents. And when you look back, it's how they implemented it. Because I know when you compare, I guess in Korea, there's a lot of pressure on children, and children obviously they work very hard here.
Yeah.
But I guess sometimes what people tell me, because I don't teach here, so I don't have experience. What people tell me is like maybe they don't. Sometimes there's not that balance between the working
Yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
hard, maybe also being a child.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Wow, your parents are very, very impressive. I've never heard that word Kumon before in English. I thought it was just in Korea. I guess it's pretty popular all over the world.
Yeah, it's really popular and it's really good. I think
Wow.
the ethos behind how Kumon works, I think is really good. The mental maths, and the speed and all these things. Yeah, it's really good.
It's a Japanese-based the company, right?
I think so. I'm not sure. I don't know the history about it, but I do think so.
Yeah, it sounds extremely Japanese. I think I've heard something like that.
It was popular. And not everyone did it when I was a child, but there were a good number of people. But I think that comes from my dad because obviously he was into maths and that was his profession, so he knew. So he was like, "You got," and we went from like a really young age. We were going like,
Wow.
but we enjoyed it. That's the odd thing. Like we enjoyed it looking back. It didn't feel like a chore or homework.
Wow, your parents are so exceptional because that's what I use for my classes that I teach at home, the English teaching business. I implement a lot of game element. I do emphasize on fun aspect and being self motivated. I talk a lot about what you can do when you actually can use it, when you can write, when you can speak, and when you can do things in English. So wow, your parents were very, very excellent teachers at home.
Yeah, I think they were. They definitely were. Looking back, I don't know how they did it. I was like, I don't know, how did you know these things? Because some of these things are for that time. They're very forward thinking. But they're like, that's what I don't know. That's what they did. And my mum always gives a lot of credit to my dad, like how forward thinking he was with his education. But yeah, very, very, very blessed. So
wow, wow. So it got started at home.
Yeah, probably.
So there was no pressure for you to have to become a doctor.
Oh no! So this story is a funny one because people always assumed that there was pressure that my parents wanted me to do medicine, and being from a Pakistani Asian background, people always assumed like, yeah, don't do it because your parents want you to, and don't feel pressure. Like this is what the teachers would tell me in school, and I was like, no, like I can choose what I want to do. I want to be a doctor. Like there's no pressure. So yeah, that's something I had to really make clear because everyone just assumed like it was coming from above.
Wow, that's awesome. So your dad was Pakistani and your mom was.
She's Pakistani as well.
Oh, both
Yeah.
of them.
Both of them, but I think so. My mom grew up in England, and she's I guess what second generation
Okay.
in England. But my dad grew up in Pakistan, and he came over maybe in his 20s. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever interacted with Pakistani like too often, so I'm not really familiar with it, other than what I see on the news sometimes once in a while. So, how did you experience some kind of clash between Pakistani and British culture when you're growing up?
Oof, okay. I definitely did, but I have to say, like England generally is very diverse, very multicultural, but obviously it's not without issues. When I was younger, I felt we moved to an area which is very like white middle class, and I was the only brown girl in my class or my school. So when we moved from this another one area to this other area, I mean my parents did that to take us to a better school. So that's why they did that. And obviously this area is more middle white and middle class. And so yeah, I was my first day and I guess I just remember feeling like I look different. I stand out a bit, but nothing ever happened. Like these are children, obviously. Like you just get on with kids and you have a good time. So I never really felt anything untoward or negative at that age. This is when I was about 7. But I think there's experiences throughout time, and I think it more comes to things like you just said, where teachers who are maybe white teachers, they have an assumption about you. So they had an assumption about my family, like that I was being pressured into doing medicine because I struggled with A levels, so I was getting very upset with my grades. I was like very, I was not happy with myself and my grades, and I was going through a hard time. And then they would assume and have this, I guess, stereotype that I was being pressured into it by my parents, which comes from being Asian, or South Asian. So I guess that's related to obviously my color or where I come from, my heritage. And then there's moments I think there's only a handful of moments I can count, maybe 2 or 3, where I just experienced racism in England, and that's probably happened only a few times. And it's being shouted at on the street, like go back to where you came from.
Really?
Yeah, and it's only happened a few times, but I guess even once is too many. And
Yeah.
again, it's very like what was it situational, because I guess it depends like where you are. That like obviously there are areas like I guess in any country, I guess where people are not as diverse, or they're probably just very old fashioned in their thinking, or can be quite racist. So that's happened a couple times. And then I guess the only other way I felt it is medicine is very diverse. You have a lot of doctors who are from different backgrounds, and a lot of doctors in England are Asian and Indian. They actually come from India or Pakistan. So that's the funny thing, because the healthcare system is completely multicultural. The nurses are from all over the world, from Africa, from Philippines, from UK, from Asia. So it's very very multicultural. It will be times where I'm on the ward, and actually all the doctors are foreign, all the nurses are foreign, and there's not a single like English or white person. So it's so interesting. And then what's happened a couple of times at work, and again this is very like contextual. It's very specific to older white patients. So you try to understand them a little bit, and a couple of times I've had patients who have said that no, I want to be treated by an English doctor, meaning a white doctor.
Yeah.
And that's happened twice to me. And each time I'm shocked and I'm like, okay, but I have to say to them, well, if you want an English doctor, there's not one available right now. So you can either have treatment or you can just wait there. And then when you tell them like that in that kind of way, then they're like, okay, fine. Because I mean it's not acceptable. Like we would try to accommodate them, but to be honest, we shouldn't have to. And there is guidance now from like our general medical council that says like we can if someone talks to us that way, I think we can actually refuse to treat them like Obviously, I would never do that if they're in like dire, if it's life and death. But like, I had a patient who comes in and he needs like blood taken from him, and the nurse came and told me like he's refusing. The nurse was Indian. He's like, no, he wants an English nurse, meaning a white nurse. And again, there was not a single white nurse on staff that day. So I was like, well, he either can have his blood drawn or he just or not, and we need it. We need his blood to be able to treat him. So tell him that either we can treat him or basically he can wait here, and who knows how long it will take. And if you tell them that, then they're usually like, okay, fine, do it. But that initial comment they make is still shocking sometimes when you hear it. It's not very often at all, but when you hear it, you're like, wow, like this still exists. And then I've had, so that's happened, which I guess is more directly racist. Then I've had like more I guess more innocent or naive comments, and this is again elderly patients. I had this very old lady. She was very sweet, very kind, but she was like, "Oh wow, like where are you from?" And I said, "I'm from not like Nottingham, which is a city in England." She was like, "No, you don't look like you're from." And then, so she meant like obviously she meant my ethnic origin. So I told her. She was like, "How did you learn English? Like, you speak really well." I was like, like I grew up here. She was like, oh, like she couldn't understand it because she saw how I looked, obviously how I appear, and she couldn't like compute it in her mind. And again, it was more innocent. She wasn't being racist, and she was genuinely asking. She was really sweet. So there's, I guess, different types, and that's more of ignorance, I guess. So you try to not let it get to you at all because these are elderly patients mostly, and you just try to give them a benefit of the doubt. But I guess in those are the senses I've experienced it. I know other people will have other experiences and also experienced racism, and I know it's also a different story for Black people in England as well. But despite all of that, it's still a very diverse, multicultural country, I think, compared to many.
When you go to a kindergarten or an elementary school, you learn to get along with everybody. And I guess we can also say that those people are the victims of racism they are practicing on themselves, because at a really old age they still haven't learned that, and obviously their life is not going to be as free as it should be, because they are discriminating people based on where they come from, and that really limit their human existence, human experience. So
Yeah.
I think they're sick in that aspect. So I think, they need healing in their attitude, in their mind.
Yeah, I think that's a nice way to put it.
Yeah.
But you're right. You're definitely right. And I think what I'm saying is obviously you can try to open people's minds, but there's some people that I think they're just so closed off that you're never gonna get anywhere. So I think it's just allowing yourself to accept that and not to get angry about it. Because you're just if you're wasting your own energy if you're gonna get upset or angry. But obviously there's times that you will maybe get offended or upset, especially if someone is very aggressive to you or very negative in your face about that because of your race or yeah.
Yeah, when my father passed away from cancer, I was going to church where the church was running the lifestyle center, and many people were being healed, and a lot of cancer patients were being healed, and they were thinking positive thoughts. They were reading the Bible. They were helping other people, and they were delivered from their depression, and they forgave their enemies, and the, like husband and wife got reconciled to each other. They decided not to get divorced, and all these like relational healings were taking place. And I was reminded a lot about the need to implement heart therapy into the general practice of medicine or any um, medical work. So, do you think it is possible for the modern medicine to be able to say, okay, I diagnose with racism, or I diagnose with relational challenges? Do you think, because that really keeps them from loving other people, and that's a stress, that's a source of stress. Do you think modern medicine has gone that far at this point? Because I know that it has been highly focused on treating the body, not the
Mm-hmm.
heart. And I know the heart governs the whole body.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think modern medicine has attempted to go on that route?
I think yes, they're trying to, or people are trying to, or individuals are trying. Whether what they call it, I guess, is more holistic medicine, maybe, or this like full-rounded medicine. And yes, it's trying, but obviously nowhere near. We're not nowhere near accomplished it yet. I don't believe, and we're very far away from that. But I think it's trying. So one thing we were taught in where I went to med school is what they call the biopsychosocial model. And literally, they would repeat this to us every single like class, every single year. Like it was drilled into this. And what that refers to is a model of application where it's about the biology, so the physical health, and psychology, so obviously like your mental health, and social. So it's about trying to encompass all these aspects, so the full rounded ness of a person. So you're not just treating someone's physical health, but you're treating their mental and social well-being, like you just said. So that's something that it is. I think there are moves and they're attempting to move in that direction because we need to recognize the importance of that. And to be honest, you're very right that your heart, whether you want to call it your heart or your mental health or your thinking is very, very, very important. Now the issue is that you'll still have, I think, people that are old school, people that don't accept that. They're very more like, well, this is very wishy-washy, and they only accept hardcore science, and that they're like, oh, this doesn't have an evidence base. So you're still going to have people that think and believe that way.
Yeah.
So that's why not everyone will I think not everyone will follow suit and become more of a holistic practitioner. But I think more and more people are, and mental health in itself is definitely becoming more prominent, and people are talking about it more. And it's very clear how it's very clear how mental health can impact your physical health and how you're feeling, how you are, everyday stresses, things like that you said, relationships, work, everything. Everything around us can affect us, and stress is literally a silent killer, and it can cause so many problems. So I think those things are becoming more obvious. Whether they come to whether we reach a point where they're like you're diagnosed with racism as a condition, I don't know if we'll ever get to that point. But for example, people are saying that maybe one day we'll get to a point where you're like social media is the cause of stress, or because someone's committed suicide because of bullying, cyberbullying. Like again, people have discussed like, well, this will become a point where this is like a condition where this is the cause of what's happened, your mental health problems, or social media addiction, for example. Like these are all new. We're in a new era and a new time generally. So I think it would be interesting to see how things transition. But I definitely think we need to realize and accept that these things do affect us, all of us, whether we realize it or not. And it can be something as so standard, like you're just, people will be on Instagram or Facebook and you're going through and even seeing people live their lives. And if you're going through a hard time, it can make you not feel very good about yourself. You can start to question your own life and things. So I think even something as small as that can really affect you. And I know I have friends and family who struggle with that. So they stay off social media, or they have times where they go onto it and they have times where they delete the app because they struggle with that day to day. Especially right now, with I think we're blessed in Korea with the control of COVID, but in England and Europe and most of the world, there's lockdowns. People are isolated in their homes for months on end, and that's really had a huge impact on their mental health. So when I was last working in England, which was in June, from Feb to June, I was in England when they had the first wave of COVID. We were having a huge influx of patients with mental health problems, a lot more suicide attempts, a lot of issues with drinking and drugs to cope, especially the people that live alone. Because if you can imagine, you're so isolated. They can't have any visitors at all. You can't go anywhere. And if you live completely alone and you have no contact with anyone, that's gonna really affect you. So yeah. So I think to answer your question again, to go back to the question is, I think there are attempts to hopefully make medicine more holistic, more full-rounded, take into account all these things that affect us day-to-day lives and our mental health, emotional well-being. But we're very far from there's no such thing as perfect, but we're very far from accomplishing that. But I think people are trying, and it depends on the individual as well, unfortunately.
You know, most people go to restaurants or cafes to talk to people, to get to know people. But these days, people are alone, they're eating by themselves, they're watching things by themselves. So, I've thought about running a cafe or a restaurant or some sort of a business where people have, there are different tables. Okay, this table is for the angry people, this table is for the depressed people, or I don't know, and they talk about what they're going through and they get to know each other even though they're complete strangers. And that was the model that I thought about. And I was thinking, when you go to a hospital, most people are strangers there. Nurses are strangers to patients, patients are strangers to patients. But you feel better when you make friends with people. And then, it's almost like people don't really recognize this time they pass on waiting, on being in their room where 4 or 5 different beds were lay there, and people, usually there's one TV and people are doing their own thing. And I think there is a need to flip this model, because I think personally, the medical industry or medical work has been shaped in a way where they think health professionals are the ones that can actually treat people with the medicine or certain things. But I think there are a lot of lifestyle factors. So, for example, if 4 or 5 different patients are in the room and they're going to stay there all day, if what they are going through, uh, they're together like a family, can be something uplifting, can be something more healthy. For example, this guy is going through a divorce, this guy is going through debt, financial problem, this guy is going through family relational conflict, he just got fired from his job. And then if they can read some sort of inspirational story or watch a movie, or it's like something uplifting, something encouraging, something bright, and if they can talk about it, if they can share it, if they can like help each other, coach each other, I think that will bring about a tremendous amount of healing, and that doesn't require a health professional. Maybe should be a coach that can do that dynamic, but I think there can be a lot of improvement in being able to really enjoy that experience in the hospital. Because when I go to a hospital, I get sick. I feel sick just getting into it, because it's very cold to me. It's not homey feeling. It's just like I feel like I'm being locked up. Like I can't do anything fun here. Everybody's watching TV. Everything is on their phone, and people don't talk to each other. I mean, you can not talk to each other all day, but at least something can be facilitated. And I think there's something that can be done a lot by implementing those little things, but that can make a huge major difference. Because if somebody that is always angry, if somebody that is always very critical of other people can learn how to embrace other people as they are, how much happiness and joy is that going to bring to that person that is going through a heart attack all the time? Or if that person is going to choose something more healthy, not something so like greasy or like fast food. So I think there are a lot of things that can be done by empowering each patient for their ability to relate to people, for their ability to take care of their body. But I think this will require a lot of restructuring. So just a lot of things that came to my mind as I was listening to you, as I was coping through my own challenges. My father passed away, so obviously, so this is my solution. If I were going to work for the medical field, what's your solution that you're going to bring into um, later on that you would like to try differently?
Yeah, that's a big question. But I actually agree with a lot of the ideas that you have, and they are similar to some of the thoughts I've had. And I think that you're right in your thinking, definitely. It's such a simple thing, but a lot of patients, all they need is someone to talk to. And that's what I mean by building a relationship. Like, literally, a patient should feel better just by, and this is my own opinion, but everyone that comes to see me as a doctor should feel better when they leave me. And I mean like that as in their spirit should feel better. Like you might not have actually fixed their ailment or their problem there and then, and very few things can be treated like this, but they should feel better within themselves. And that all it takes is taking a few minutes to honestly listen to someone, to genuinely listen and to hear them and to give them your undivided attention for the, even for those 5-10 minutes. And honestly, it makes such a big difference. And that's one of the biggest things. Like when you spend time with patients, like you said, right? They come in and you're a stranger to them, but they will tell you their whole life story. And that's something that always astounds me because it's a huge level of trust. But they will literally tell you everything, and they've just met you. They can even feel comfortable to even if you need to examine them, they can take all their clothes off and you can examine them. And what other scenarios that happen? Like you just met someone the first time, and you can just completely be comfortable or show them everything and tell them everything.
Yeah.
So it's such a privilege. That is a huge privilege of being a doctor, and we have to recognize that. But I think the simple thing of just listening to patients is so vital, and it's so much more important than we realize. I think that's a really good point that you said, and that's definitely how I feel. And it's just showing someone that extra care, and it's not even about medications or treating them. That's even like a side to what you're actually doing. And I think what you described, like having a way that people can, in patients can interact or to engage whilst they're in hospital. That's a really good point, and I think some hospitals are trying to do that. And what's funny is everything you described is actually what they do for pediatric wards, pediatric patients. Okay, there are obviously exceptions with patients if they're too sick to mingle with other patients, fine. But generally, how we treat children and what children need is what adults still need.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Basically,
Yeah.
it's so true, right?
Yeah.
And kids on what a child going to a pediatric a children's ward, right? It's colorful. There's like paintings and things on the walls. There's colors everywhere. There's toys. There's things to stimulate them. They have the playroom where kids can go and play together. You have the sensory room for those that maybe they suffer from ailments or disability, but they have a room where there's lights and it's soft and it's warm, like and there's noises. Like there's so much that goes into helping, to entertain and to help children. But to be honest, adults need the exact same thing. They need to be taken care of. They need somewhere to have an outlet. They need something to distract them. I feel like adult wards should be uplifting as well. They should be colorful. They should be bright. And it's so funny, but that's how it goes. Because I always go on. That's why I think I even wanted to do pediatrics. Because the second you go onto a children's ward, you're like, oh wow, you just feel so happy.
Yeah.
And kids are happy. They're laughing. Children are very resilient, right? But we lose that as an adult, and I think that's half the problem. We need to keep that spirit, and we need to also remember that what we need is as humans, as adults, is very basic needs to be met, to be listened, to be heard, to be fed and watered. That's literally it. Like it's not even more complicated than that. And you don't have to make it more complicated. If you can fulfill those basic needs, medicine can come after, and it can still be, that's still there. So I completely agree with what you're saying, and I think for me, okay, changing a system is very hard, obviously, but I think for me it's about just hopefully how I'll have my practice one day, and is to kind of incorporate these things. And I think one very hopefully long, very far in the future, but one day a big dream of mine is to have whatever specialist I become, but to have a clinic where I can have which encompasses all these things. So you can have obviously medical doctor, but you can also have alternative and complementary therapy. So you can have a counselor or a physical therapist there. You can have acupuncturists. You can have a mixture of all of these different healthcare providers under one roof, and hold things like you're saying, support groups or activities. And among my main things in life is health education. Like education is so important, and there's a lot of things that just general things people might not realize, people don't know. We don't get taught in school about health, like diet and health. I think the most you're taught is half your plate should be veggies, have protein, and carb. That's it. Like there's not more to it. And obviously nowadays there's so much more information out there. There's different lifestyles. So I think health education is the key. It really is the key, and starting that the younger the better. And that then goes into the fact that prevention is always better than cure. That's something that we all know, we all get taught. And that prevention really is lifestyle. So teaching a healthier and a better balanced lifestyle from a younger age, and making it accessible for everyone. because we can say like, you should eat organic meat, or you should do this, or you should do this, or just eat veggies and this, that. But to be honest with you, that's not possible for everyone, because I know in England, like eating organic, for example, is very, very expensive.
Yeah.
So it's not feasible for everyone. People have um, different walks of life. People earn different amounts of money, so you need to make it feasible and realistic. But it doesn't have to be expensive to eat healthy. So I think really it's about teaching that education from a young age for lifestyle, and that means diet and exercise, and also I think knowledge on just medical conditions, and how some people, like for example South Asians, are more prone to have diabetes. Why is that? What can we do to prevent it? So I think it's that, and that's one of the things I feel very strongly about, because like you say education is power, right? Like having that knowledge is power, and it really will. The earlier you have that knowledge, the better the decisions you can make throughout life, and the earlier you can have a healthy lifestyle, the better it is for you in the long term. So really, it's trying to get to that stage earlier to prevent anyone from having lifestyle diseases, for example. Obviously, there'll always be conditions, unfortunately, that we can't control, whether that be cancer or whether it be genetic and stuff. But the biggest thing that we're fighting with right now is lifestyle diseases and stress. So it's trying to teach that holistic and that balance, that lifestyle balance from a young age. Um, yeah, I hope I answered your question. I seem to like go like this and get to your question.
Yeah, I think you did answer my question, because when I was growing up as a Christian, I was reading the Bible, and it didn't come to me as a fairy tale. It came to me as a real story, because I just literally saw cancer patients just or were working as volunteers for the lifestyle center. They didn't have the cancers anymore, and not all the cancer patients die. Some cancer patients reverse cancers and they are free from cancer. And I was thinking, wow, this is what happened in the Bible. What happened in maybe outside of the Bible, all over the places where people were. I read a story where this guy knew that he was gonna die, so he said, okay, I'm just gonna help everybody, because I'm gonna die anyway. And after he spent like months or like days helping other people, he came to the clinic and the hospital, and cancer was gone because he was so happy helping other people. So reversing that condition through thinking differently, because a lot of stress comes from looking to yourself too much, looking to your own problem too much, like holding on to yourself too much. But when you help other people, you are busy making other people happy. So when other people are becoming happy because of what you do, you feel empowered. Wow, I'm not a victim of the circumstance. I'm actually shaping these people's lives. So that brings you tremendous joy, and that frees you from all the burdens. And I learned that like most mental patients have huge amount of guilt. And when they know they have been forgiven, when they know they are loved, when they know there is somebody that trust in them, put confidence in them, wow, you feel great. So I think there are a lot of things that can be done, and I don't think these stories are just there just to inspire us. I think they are there to be implemented into our lives, and we can practice these things. Even though I'm not a medical professional, I think I can still practice in my own little small way, and I can become a walking health clinic by, as you said, teaching people, demonstrate to people how I live. Yeah.
Exactly. You're so right. You don't have to be a doctor or any healthcare practitioner. It's not about that. It's about leading by example.
Yeah.
And doing it in your everyday life, like you do. Exactly. So anyone can do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the miracles are there to be discovered or to be implemented. I think we already know the solution, and I think as long as we carry them out, I think we'll see a tremendous result in action. So my last question is: so what's your plan for the future? You're doing your internship and you're stuck in Korea at this point.
Yeah. So obviously, I took time off from work to be here in Korea until David finishes his PhD. So that was a hard decision, because I love working. Obviously, I love my job. I love medicine, but it was important to be here. So he will hopefully finish in February. So the next few months, actually. God willing, and then we'll move back. We'll move to England, so I can continue training, continue working, and David will obviously be there. Hopefully, he'll get a good job, and so we'll be there for the foreseeable future. I don't know about long term, like forever where we'll settle, but for now we'll be in England and I'll work there initially.
Okay.
And,
So
yeah.
so you're doing the residential phase. You're in the residential
Yeah.
phase.
Yeah, so when I go back, I'll work for a few months and I'll need to apply for my, like, because I took time out, so I'll need to go and I can work. And then after I've worked a bit, I'll apply, maybe this time next year, I'll be applying for my specialty, what I decide. So I have a huge interest in pediatrics, like I told you before, but I'm not sure. Sometimes I still debate because I love the interaction with adults as well. So it's a hard decision. But I have some time. So yeah, this time next year, I'll hopefully I'll know better with what I'll have to know what I want to do.
So you still need to get into specialty area even though you want to be a family doctor?
No, so if you want to be a family doctor, you have to still apply. You onto like this training pathway, and you apply for that. So you apply to become a family doctor, and that's 3 years training. So you do another 3 years, and after 3 years, you're a fully qualified general practitioner, family doctor. But for other specialties, so for pediatrics, for example, it's 8 years training. For most specialties, it's actually between 6 to 8 years. So being a family doctor is the shortest pathway. Because I think the difference is like you know a lot, you know a little about a lot kind of thing, like and I think people assume maybe it's easy to be a family doctor, but I think the reason why it's not is because you have to really
know everything.
You have to know a lot, but also like you have to top of your game because you need to be able to recognize when something needs referring on. Because you need to be able to recognize those red flags, those things that are serious that then need to be sent to a specialist.
Wow.
So, because they're the gatekeepers almost, like you see them first. So if your family doctor misses something significant, which obviously has happened in the past because of just probability, then if something is missed, it can be fatal. So it's also a very important job. But obviously, yes, specialists are very specialized in that field.
Oh, I see.
That's why it takes many, many years. So part of me wants to be a specialist. However, we'll see because it's a very long training pathway, and unfortunately, being a woman, we have to also think about how to balance that and life and whether family life and children and these things. But like my mom always tells me, like, don't let that stop you. Like you should always go out and go for what you want, and you can always train part time as well. So there are ways to do it, but it's a long, long time to be training and to be working, like shifts and long hours, long days, night shifts, and all these things. So it's really you have to really decide if you want it badly enough.
Wow. So family doctors are walking medical encyclopedia where they should be able to identify anything that comes up, and then they should hand the patient over to the specialist.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily easier; it's just different.
Yeah, I think a lot of people they have a bad people assume it's easier, or they think, oh yeah, you're just a GP or you're just a family doctor. But I think it's a misconception.
Yeah, I see. So you're not sure if you're going to be a family doctor or get a specialty.
I'm not sure
training.
yet. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's a debate in my mind, but we'll see.
Okay, so
really the right choice.
So 3 years of getting a bachelor's, and then 5 years of medical school, and then 2 years of experiencing 6 different areas, and then the residency.
2 years. 2 years, and then residency. Yeah.
Oh, 2 years. 2 years of experience different things. And how long is the residency?
And that varies. So it's like 3 years family doctor, 8 years peds, 6, 7 years. Like it just varies on what you pick. Like if you want to be a surgeon, some surgery, like I think neurosurgery, 9 years. So because if you think about it's very long. It's a big long commitment. Everyone always has the same reaction, and I'm like, when you get into medicine, you have to accept that this is your life. You're never gonna stop learning, and it's a constantly learning, constantly developing. Even once you fully finish, let's say you're now a neurosurgeon, for example, you still keep learning because things are always changing. You need to get what do they call it? You have an appraisal each year. You have to meet certain continuing professional education development every single year. You have to sit a number of classes or online or go to conferences. Like there's constant things you have to do every year, and this is part of your life as a doctor. because you have to maintain that highest level of education. You need to be aware of new information. Guidelines can always be changing, new medications, new treatments. So it's a lifestyle choice, and you have to really love it, because people always think, oh, and you do it for the money and this, that. But actually, in England, doctors, they have a good salary. Don't get me wrong, you're comfortable, but you don't make lots and lots of money. Abroad, in other countries, yes, doctors are very, very well paid, but not as much as so in England. So people always say, like, it's not, you're not in it for the money. Like, when you graduate as a doctor in England, you make how much? About 23,000 pounds a year. But you can make more working in a regular job or just working in a shop. You can make more money.
Really?
So yeah. So when you graduate after all the years of education, you're making an average salary, and obviously it will increase, and you go on to make a very comfortable salary. Don't get me wrong, you have a very good life. However, it's no, I don't think anyone could do that job for the money, because the hours and the commitment is a lot. So you have to really want to really enjoy it. And some people, it's their whole life. They, especially like surgeons, like they just love. Everyone loves what they do, but you have to really want it. So
how much is that in dollars? 23,000 pounds.
Dollars, I don't know. I have to convert it. Maybe $30,000.
$8,000. Oh,
£23,000, maybe $30,000 or $32,000. I don't know.
A year.
A year.
A year. Okay. I see.
So that's when you start, and it increases each year from there on. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a comfortable salary in England, but it's just funny because you can make more working a regular 9 to 5 job.
So up to how much does it go up?
Oh yeah, so like I said, you're very comfortable. So by the time you finish, as in at the end of residency, like at the end of your training, when you're a specialist, you can be on between 80 to 100,000.
100,000
pounds. So maybe dollars, I don't know what that is, $130,000, $150,000.
Okay.
A year. So yeah, by the end, you can make a very, very good living. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, okay.
It's just throughout that period when you're training or when you graduate.
Okay.
So but I'm not complaining. It's just that people always think, oh my gosh, like they think you're a doctor, you're earning like a big bucks. But I'm like,
there's a lot of stress though, a lot of responsibility also.
Yeah, it's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah. So
that's why I feel like you couldn't pay someone to do that if they didn't want to do it. Like it's a lot. So it's a lot of responsibility. And at a young age, imagine if you graduate as a doctor at 23. I was 25. And you're very young, so someone's 23, and then you're responsible for someone's life. Yeah. So even when you first start working, you're holding like the on-call, you're holding the bleeps, the pager. Yeah. You're holding the crash bleep. So if someone goes into cardiac arrest, you're called along with the team. You're called to go attend. So it's a lot of responsibility. So I'll never forget my first Christmas on call, which was a couple of years ago now. So I was on call the whole week, and in that week I had four cardiac arrest calls where people are actively having a heart attack, or they're not responding, so you have to go and attend and give life-saving treatment, right? And that happened to me 4 times in 1 week, and it was during Christmas. I was exhausted, and it was the most intense week I've ever worked. And unfortunately, 3 of those people died. 3 out of those 4 people, one being on Christmas Day, and these things. And at the end of that week, I was so tired, and I think I just broke down crying at the end of the week, because it was just a lot. It's very intense, emotionally and physically. I was living alone as well at that time where I live. Obviously, David's in Korea, so I think all of these aspects, I was just like, oh, I'm so tired. And it doesn't hit you though. You're working. Then when you finish at the end of the week, because I think I worked 80, 90 hours that week, I was like, whoa. And then it takes you a few days at least being off work to release. It could still go around your head, because you're like, did I do this right? Was this okay? What happened in your head and what you can learn from it as well. So it's difficult, but obviously I love the job. Most of us love the job. We wouldn't do anything different. But yeah, it's definitely hard, and there's a lot of responsibility. Yeah.
Wow. I want to salute to you for all the commitment and dedication that you put into this work.
Bless you. No, it's a privilege, it's a blessing to do this job. So.
Yeah, you went through a lot, and you're gonna go through more, and yeah, thank you so much. It was very very insightful and very very entertaining. And
Oh, you're welcome.
I learned a lot
Oh, I'm
from you.
glad.
Yeah, I've never dug this deep into this medical work, and hearing from the doctor was very very enjoyable.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's good to hear your ideas as well and your thoughts. They're really, really, really interesting.
Yeah, I think wild thoughts, and sometimes it works.
Yeah, that really works. I think we need to meet up and talk some more, hopefully, when we have time.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
You came here last time when you were making something together, and we can let's hang out with Lily and David and everybody else. Yeah,
let's do that.
Thank you so much, and
all right,
I'll send you the video, and then you'll be able to watch.
That'll be great. Yeah, I won't watch myself back. That'll be awesome.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I always listen to everything that I record.
That's good.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Take care.
Have a good day.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
Bye bye.